Okay, so you know how much I love my garden, right?
Mm,
I've been working on these tomatoes all summer,
right.
and something weird is going on.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and I think it might be those red spider mites.
Oh no.
You heard of these
I
things?
have. They're quite the common garden foe, actually.
So they're not as cute as they sound.
No, not at all.
Red spider mites?
No.
I don't know, there's something about that name that makes them seem kind of harmless.
Right. Yeah, like a little ladybug or something.
Exactly.
No, they're much more devious.
Okay, well, I, for one, am ready to wage war on these little guys, and I hear Farmonaut has some really great organic solutions.
Yeah, they do. They have a ton of information on those little red spider mites.
Perfect, because that's exactly what we're diving deep into today.
Let's do it.
All right, so first things first, what are we dealing with here? They're not actually spiders, are they?
Well, you're closer than you think when you say spider mites.
Hmm.
They're not actually insects. They're arachnids.
Ooh.
Yeah. So that puts them in the same family as spiders and ticks and scorpions.
Okay, so definitely not cute.
No, not cute. And really, really tiny, like almost impossible to see tiny.
Okay, so we're talking microscopic practically.
Yeah, they're about 0.4 millimeters long.
See, I can barely even picture a millimeter.
Yeah, it's really small.
Yeah.
And to make things even trickier, they can be different colors depending on what they're feeding on and the time of year. So you might have red ones or orange ones or even yellowish green ones.
Oh, wow. So we really have to be detectives to even know if we've got them.
Exactly. Early identification is key because once they get established, they can multiply really, really fast.
Okay, so let's say I'm channeling my inner Sherlock Holmes here. What telltale signs should I be on the lookout for?
Well, webbing is a big one.
Oh, like an actual spider web?
Yeah, like a fine silky web, especially on the underside of the leaves.
Oh, okay.
And if you see that, that's a pretty good indication you've got spider mites.
It's like they're setting up little hammocks all over my tomato plants.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And another thing you might notice is the leaves themselves. They might have this kind of stippled or speckled look to them, like somebody took a tiny salt shaker and just sprinkled salt all over them.
Okay, I've definitely seen that before. I just never knew what it was from.
Yeah, and if it gets really bad, the leaves can even start to turn bronze or yellow.
Oh, no, that's not good.
No, that means they're sucking the life out of your plants, literally.
So once we've identified the culprits, why is it so important to act fast? I mean, they're just tiny little things, right?
Well, here's the thing about spider mites. They have an incredibly fast life cycle. Under the right conditions, they can go from egg to adult in 5 to 7 days.
Wow, that's like basically overnight.
It practically is, yeah.
Yeah.
And each female can lay hundreds of eggs.
No way.
Hundreds, hundreds. So you can see how quickly a few spider mites can turn into a full-blown infestation.
Okay, so they're like the rabbits of the insect world.
That's a good way to put it, except much less cuddly.
Definitely less cuddly and a lot more destructive, it sounds like.
That's for sure.
5 to 7 days.
Yep. That's insane. I mean, I guess if they've got nothing else to do all day but eat and lay eggs.
And that's exactly what they do. They're eating machines, those spider mites. And speaking of eating, we were talking about how quickly they can multiply.
Yeah.
Well, those hot, dry conditions that we've been having lately.
Oh, don't tell me.
Yeah, that's like paradise for spider mites.
So the heat wave is like an all-you-can-eat buffet for them.
Pretty much. Hot, dry weather stresses plants out, and stressed plants are much more susceptible to pests.
It's like when I get stressed out, I'm more likely to get sick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the same idea with plants. When they're stressed, they're not as able to defend themselves.
So all those times I accidentally forgot to water my plants.
No.
I was basically rolling out the red carpet for those spider mites.
You might have been giving them a VIP invitation without even knowing it.
Oops. Well, good thing I'm diving deep into this today and learning all about organic pest control.
That's the spirit.
Because I'm realizing now that maybe those conventional pesticides I've used in the past weren't such a good idea. Yeah, you have to be careful with those.
Yeah.
They can sometimes do more harm than good.
Yeah, it's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline.
Exactly. A lot of those conventional pesticides, they're not very discerning. They'll kill the good bugs right along with the bad bugs.
And the good bugs are our friends.
Exactly. They're the ones that help keep the bad bugs in check.
So we're talking ladybugs, right?
Ladybugs, yep. Those are a great one.
Okay, so if we're trying to go the organic route, what's our strategy here? What tools do we have at our disposal?
So I like to think of it as a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
We've got our cultural controls, our biological controls, and then our botanical and organic pesticides.
Okay, so let's unpack that. What exactly are cultural controls?
So cultural controls are all about making your garden a less hospitable place for pests to set up shop.
Okay, so making it less appealing to the spider mites.
Exactly. So that means things like proper watering.
Okay, so deep watering less often.
Exactly. Deep watering less often is much better than shallow watering every day because it encourages those plant roots to grow nice and deep.
Makes sense.
And strong roots mean a stronger plant overall.
Right. A strong plant can fight off those pests.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of a good dusting.
Dusting. Like actually taking a duster to my plants.
Well, not exactly. I mean, you could. But what I mean is giving your plants a good spray with the hose every now and then.
Oh, okay.
It'll help knock off any spider mites that are just hanging out on the leaves.
Oh, so it's like literally washing them away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a simple trick, but it can be really effective.
Okay, I like it. So we're talking watering, dusting, and what else? What about pruning?
Pruning is huge.
Yeah.
Good air circulation is key to preventing spider mite infestations.
Because they like it stuffy.
If they do. They love those hot, humid conditions. So make sure you're not overcrowding your plants. Give them plenty of space to breathe.
Okay, so good airflow. Got it. What about this biological warfare you mentioned? That sounds intense.
It is kind of intense, but in a good way.
Ah.
This is where we bring in the big guns, the beneficial
Terrific.
insects.
Okay, so I'm picturing like a tiny army of ladybugs parachuting into my garden.
Something like that, yeah. So ladybugs are great. They love to eat spider mites. But there are lots of other beneficial insects out there, too.
Like what?
Well, there are these predatory mites.
Wait, there are good mites?
There are. They're like the spider mite's worst nightmare.
Oh, so it's like a might eat mite world out there?
Pretty much. And then
Yeah.
there are lacewings. Their larvae are like tiny alligators. They just gobble up spider mites.
Okay, this is amazing. I had no idea there were so many good bugs out there.
Oh, yeah. There's a whole army of them just waiting to help us out.
So how do we recruit them to our garden?
Diversity is key. The more variety you have in your garden, the more attractive it will be to beneficial insects.
Okay, so I should plant lots of different kinds of flowers and vegetables.
Exactly. And avoid using those broad spectrum pesticides that wipe out everything.
Right, because we want to keep those good bugs happy and well fed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A healthy ecosystem is a balanced ecosystem.
Okay, so we've got our cultural controls, we've got our biological warfare. What about these botanical and organic pesticides you mentioned?
So those are our last line of defense.
Okay, like if the other stuff isn't cutting it.
Exactly. These are pesticides that are derived from natural sources, so they're much more environmentally friendly than those conventional pesticides.
Okay, so what are we talking about here? Give me some examples.
Well, neem oil is a good one. It's derived from the seeds of the neem tree.
Neem oil, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's a really versatile and effective insecticide.
So how does it work?
It works in a few different ways. It disrupts the spider mite's hormones. It prevents them from feeding properly, and it can even kill them on contact.
Wow, so it's like a multi-pronged attack on those spider mites.
Exactly. And because it's derived from a plant, it's much safer for you, your family, and the environment.
Okay, what else? What about insecticidal soups?
Those are good too. They work by basically drying out the spider mites.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they're very effective against soft-bodied insects like spider mites.
So it's like a super drying facial for spider mites.
I guess you could say that. And then there are horticultural oils. These work by suffocating the spider mites.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you have to be careful with those. Make sure you're applying them properly and only when necessary.
Okay, so neem oil, insecticidal soaps, and horticultural oils. Those are botanical and organic pesticide options.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got a whole arsenal of organic weapons to fight those spider mites. But even with these natural options, I imagine it's still important to use them carefully.
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
Just because something is natural doesn't mean you can just go overboard with it.
right, like too much of a good thing can still be a bad thing.
Exactly. We still want to be mindful of those beneficial insects. They're our allies in this fight.
Absolutely. We don't want to accidentally take out our own troops.
Exactly. It's all about balance. Finding that sweet spot where we're keeping the spider mites in check without disrupting the whole ecosystem.
Right, because a healthy garden is a balanced garden.
Exactly. Speaking of balance, technology can actually play a really interesting role in organic pest control these days.
Oh, yeah. I was curious about that. You mentioned Farmonaut uses, like, satellite technology.
I know it sounds crazy, right?
It does sound a little crazy. Like, how can satellites help me in my backyard garden?
Well, it's all about data. Farmonaut uses satellites to monitor crop health from space.
Wait, really? So they can see my plants from space?
Well, they can see the bigger picture. They use these special sensors that can detect subtle changes in plant health, changes that we wouldn't even be able to see with the naked eye.
Okay, now you're just blowing my mind. So what kind of changes are we talking about here?
Well, for example, they can detect things like changes in leaf color or even the amount of moisture in the plants.
And that tells them if there's a pest problem.
Exactly. Those can be early indicators of stress, which could mean that pests are starting to move in.
Wow, so it's like an early warning system for my garden.
Exactly. You get an alert on your phone that says, hey, your tomato plants might be under attack.
That's incredible. So I can take action before it even becomes a visible problem.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's the whole idea. Prevention is key. And because Farmonaut is also tracking things like weather patterns and soil conditions, they can give you really tailored advice for your specific garden.
So it's like having a personal gardener, but like a super high-tech one.
Exactly. It's like having a whole team of experts in your back pocket.
Okay, that is seriously impressive. I am sold. So are there any real-world success stories? Can this technology actually help people like me grow healthier, more abundant gardens?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There are tons of examples. I was reading about this one tomato farmer. He was struggling with spider mites year after year. He started using Farmonaut and saw a huge difference. His yields went up, his pest problems went down. It was a win-win.
That's amazing. I love hearing stories like that. It gives me so much hope for the future of gardening.
Me too. It's an exciting time to be a gardener, that's for sure.
It really is. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've
Yeah.
talked about the good, the bad, and the tiny. We've learned how to identify spider mites, how to prevent them, and how to fight back if they do attack. We've even explored the future of organic pest control, which is looking pretty high-tech.
We have. It's amazing how much there is to learn about these tiny creatures.
I know, it's like a whole secret world out there right under our noses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the more we learn about it, the better equipped we'll be to create gardens that are both productive and in harmony with nature.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time for me to go check on my tomato plants. Armed with all this new knowledge, I'm feeling ready to take on those spider mites.
That's the spirit. Good luck with your garden.
Thanks. I'll need it. And to all our listeners out there, happy gardening.
Happy gardening, everyone.